Hi, friends. Today we're going to talk about kind of the edgier, darker, sexier side of the spiritual self and embracing that into our awakening process and our spiritual growth. So, usually, our our concepts, or at least the way in which we envision the spiritual awakening or the spiritual journey in general, is very light, very fluffy, very wholesome and good, very directed and modest light. And when we look at the darker, harder, rougher parts of ourselves, we kind of look at them as things that need to be fixed or things that need to be healed, when in reality we should be embracing those things instead of trying to negate them. And in the embracement of them, we could actually utilize them to help our personal growth and even our spiritual growth. So, sexual repression is, of course, a byproduct of the state of the patriarch, where only men are allowed to experience the sexual self, and in that experience of the sexual self, it is very dominant, very domineering, and consequently abusive, and consequently so human that it's too human. When in reality, the sexual self is in part of the spiritual self, because sex is a very it's a very pleasant, very loving thing, very high vibrational when it is without influence, when it is just its own natural state, without intent, without expectation, without aggression. But because sexual repression is a byproduct of the state of the patriarch, that it consequently creates a a learned shaming within the machine mind. The machine mind being the absent kind of um, automatic programmed mind, the mind that is separate from consciousness, that the part of your mind that takes in information and reacts to information without any real awareness. That shame, just as it would apply to any other aspect of the self, of the spiritual self, it creates a dynamic where you're not whole, where you're not good enough, and where you start to repress inherent parts of your being. Even if it was just the human experience, you are experiencing the human experience, and to ignore that would be a fallacy in your being here. So there are a couple of things that we need to take note of here. And one, it is that the sexual self does not need to be experienced with others to be experienced. It is inherently and energetically within yourself. When you have sex with other people, you share their own sexual experience, their own sexual self, and you are bonding those experiences. Yes, however, to say that just because you are bonding those energies, that you have to be careful about who you are sleeping with, is reaffirming that you are wrong if you are experiencing your sexual self. And then two, this concept this concept of embracing your darker side, your edgier side, goes beyond just your sexual self, beyond your sexual um, energy. Energetically, the sexual self is very much akin to other parts of the self that, in their nature, take power over the self, or through and with the self. So, that attitude, that kind of valley girl, what you say attitude, that boundary setting, affirm attitude is in that same realm, in another part of us in which we are shamed for, or otherwise seen as off-putting. Of course, that is a product of the machine mind in the masses. Um, but that part of us is necessary in order for us to have that affirmation in our groundedness through the sharper parts of the navigation through our lives, such as where there's big dramas and people are wanting to put their energies onto you. By being firm with yours and non-malleable, you are essentially creating a barrier between these abusive energies and your energies. Consequently, this means that the ego, that thing that we love to hate, actually has use, good, non-abusive, non-harmful use. Our embracing of these parts of ourselves that we were taught are bad is going to be fulfilling in such a way that we need to start to talk about it, that we need to relearn our language and shift our teachings a little bit, so that we're not telling people that their ego is a bad thing, because their ego is not inherently bad. It is inherently neutral. It, like other parts of ourselves, learn through our experience and our path. Right? The things that happen to us, the things that we see, the things that we learn, and then over time, these separate parts of ourselves start to become intergrained with the whole parts of ourselves. What this means is that because we are not inherently bad, there are no parts of us that are inherently bad. Also meaning the ego. In fact, the ego, when healthy and when used properly, can give you the ability to think logically and the ability to think inwardly and take that inward thinking and put it outward. This can be harmful if you are not being mindful of it. But if you are being mindful of your ego, of your sharper, darker self, you are taking the concept of it being sharper and darker, and you're neutralizing it, the good and the bad, the concept of the good and the bad, which is completely concept. It's philosophy. It's not real. It's not tangible. It's something that we talk about, but in the experience, they're all neutral. It is how we use them. It is how we embrace them, which means that all of these parts of us have the potential to be good parts of ourselves and do good things for us. What this means is that while these parts of us can be good, since they're neutral, likewise, they could be bad if they're used badly. What this means is that our idea of judgment should probably be altered a little bit, because those who do bad things are doing things badly, yes, but the thing in which they are doing could equally have been good, meaning that a choice had to be made there, and in that choice the thing became good or it became bad. But having the energy of that thing, the experience of that thing in of itself, was neither bad nor good, which means to hold a shame towards other people or ourselves for an experience at its core is inappropriate. Ultimately, we need to come to an understanding with ourselves and with our peers, regardless of the roles that they play in our life, that our intimate selves being embraced Even if this is publicly embraced, so long as it is not projected towards somebody with intent towards the person, is vital for us to be able to experience our wholeness. And there is a difference between being whole and experiencing your wholeness. It is not to say that everybody experiences sexuality, and it is not to say that those who don't experience their sexual selves are in any way wrong, or any way bad. It's valid and it's fine. It is to say that for those that do experience their sexual selves, that it should be embraced, and it shouldn't be something that you look down on yourself for, because it's not the idea of being publicly sexy has been degraded so much that in doing so, there are at least a handful of people who are going to make the judgment that you are seeking attention, or that you are lonely, or that you are incomplete. None of this is true, but we have been trained to believe this, again, because of the mainstream mind, the state, and the patriarchy. Likewise, the other parts of ourselves that are more kind of in your face, kind of rejecting authority, rejecting the status quo, are equally as vital for experiencing our wholeness. The shame that we have created towards ourselves and towards others needs to be let go and disintegrated, frankly, so that we can understand ourselves as beings that occasionally are sexual and occasionally feel sexy and occasionally don't want to hide the fact that we feel sexy. It's okay. We shouldn't have to do those things. We shouldn't have to further reaffirm that being sexual, or that being firm in yourself, all of yourselves, your intimate self, these are good things. We shouldn't be repressing them any more than we already have been. It is time for us as a collective to understand that love goes well beyond preconditioned mind. And in doing so, we will further our bond as self. Because you and I and all things are inherently intertwined. And in order to get back to our roots with each other and with all things, we have to embrace the fullness of all of ourselves and all of each other. And we have to understand this so that we could start appreciating these parts of ourselves in a way where we do not project them negatively, where the stress, the influence of that stress, and the influence of the perceived darkness and dirtiness and naughtiness and badness of these things do not do harm. The takeaway here is that it is okay to experience your sexual self. It is okay to flaunt it. It is okay to appreciate your own intimacy, and the intimacy that you have doesn't have to be hidden from the world, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. Of course, be mindful, do no harm to others, do not use these things aggressively, of course, but embrace them. Embrace all of you, because all of you is lovable, all of you is precious, and all of you is beautiful, even your sexy self. Beyond this, of course, the other aspects of you that will be deemed bad are not bad, and those things should also be embraced, because your naughty side, your bad, dark side, is equatable to your light, your good, your wholesome, fluffy, soft side. You are perfect. I love you. I hope that you have a beautiful day. You are lovable. You are loved. You are the universe. You're so good. Please hit that like button, hit the bell notification, and subscribe if you haven't already, and have a beautiful day. I love you. Goodbye.